What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the latest edition of the Real Estate Podcast, coming to you live on Hand Radio. We have an exciting show for you today. I am your co-host, Meldon Dickens,
And I'm Al Davis.
and we are glad that you are joining us today. To all of our supporters and followers on all of the social media, we thank you today. We have a great show, a great guest for you today. And first, we want to just give a shout out to the visionary and founder of the Hand Radio, King Richard Good. And thank all of you for tuning in to our latest edition today. And we're going to get started. We have a great guest who is a definite trailblazer in the real estate industry uh, by the name of Mark Owens. And he's going to just give some great gems on some information today about how to get started in this business and do some great work. And I'll turn it over to Al and let him talk a little bit more about his relationship with Mark, and we'll get started.
Well, I'm excited about the show today. Number one, and I tell people it's close to me, it's like three people that I've been around for more than 20 years. So it's like three people that I really look up to, in the real estate game in Baltimore. And Mark is definitely one of those three people. So I'm just happy to be talking to him so he can give us some insights as to how he got to where he is currently and some of the obstacles that he had to overcome to get to where he currently is in real estate. So I want to start off by saying, good day, Mark. How are you?
Hey, thank you, Al and Meldon, both for a wonderful introduction. I appreciate it.
So I want to talk today with Mark because Mark does a little, like, it's different areas in real estate for people that don't understand real estate. And I'm assuming you turn into this podcast because you want to learn different areas of real estate. Well, over the last 20 years, I basically have done rentals and rehabs and flip. I don't think that's Mark's main thing. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to talk about some of the things it may take some of the things you may have to overcome and some of the things that Mark has overcome to get to where he currently is. And I think he's in retirement mode now, aren't you, Mark?
Pretty much, about 97%.
So yeah, I'm trying to get to that point. I feel as though I paid my dues and took my lumps. I want to get to 97% retirement mode, and I'm sure a lot of people that's close to me want me to get in that mode, Mark. So hopefully I can learn something today where I could get closer to the retirement mode like you are. So let's start today. Do you remember how we met? How many years ago we met? Probably 10 years ago, Mark?
Oh, I know exactly how we met. Do you want me to tell the story?
Go ahead. Oh, and nothing to hide.
Because there are some lessons in the story for people. So it's going to take a few minutes, but there are some lessons to it. So it's probably around 2008, 2007, 2008. I was wholesaling full time, sending out yellow letters and postcards and hanging up bandit signs and all that stuff. And got a phone call from a person named John. I'm going to say his name, John Briner, lived up in Pennsylvania. And talking to John, he owned a bunch of stuff in Baltimore City. And he came down to, Baltimore, every couple of weeks to just check on his properties and, sign paperwork for another deal or something like that. So we had a really good relationship on the phone, and he just called me off a yellow letter. And during the process of that, call, I asked him if he'd be interested in meeting for lunch, because I'm a huge proponent for networking and, just meeting people that are doing it and just getting around and getting your name out there and meeting other people. So he agreed to meet me for lunch. And I had, when I was wholesaling at the time, I had a partner named Dave, who we were just partners in wholesaling. We didn't own any rentals together or anything. And we met at a place called Ethel and Ramon's in Washington, Mount Washington, for lunch like a couple of weeks later. And during the course of that lunch, he asked me, John said, "So Mark, I'm just curious, like, what are you looking for?" And I said, I'm looking for buildings that are 10 units and up that need rehab. And he said, okay, well, if something comes up, I'll let you know. A couple of days later, he gives me a call and says, man, a friend of mine, this guy, Al's got an 18-unit building, bank owned. It's vacant, needs some work, and he's wholesaling it. Are you interested in it? And I was like, hell yeah, I'm interested in it. Like, man, send me the information. So he sent me the information, which included a $40,000 assignment fee. I was cool with that. Look, if the numbers work for me, the numbers work for me. I don't care what the wholesaler makes. I don't care if they make $1. I don't care if they lose $100 or they make $100,000. It doesn't matter. Good deal is a good deal.
Exactly.
And so I talked to John. I don't remember if John and Al, they might have split that 40. I'm not sure, but Al didn't know me at the time. And, to me, my word is my word. If I say I'm going to pay that money, I'm going to pay that money. I don't need it in writing. And so, I think Al called John a few times. You sure this guy's going to show up? You sure he's going to do it? And, and a couple months later, I showed up at the table and the deal went through and I got paid and Al got paid and John got paid. And I wound up with a great building, which I actually just sold last year with the help of another wholesaler, by the way, who, and I paid him $40,000 for, he sold 3 buildings for me. And and that was just off a handshake. I mean, I just agreed to him. Yeah, I'll pay you $40K. And that was it. There was nothing in writing. And then I told him, I says, listen, man, send me an email stating that, and I'll just respond, okay? Because if I get hit by a car, my wife ain't giving you nothing. Like, she don't know you, man. She don't know you. She don't know you. Right. So he, he sent me an email, and I just responded, okay, and that was it. It's like that's the way I run my business. And so the lessons from this little story are, one is network your ass off. You talk on the phone to somebody you don't know that's kind of local and you get an opportunity to meet with them and take them out to lunch or dinner or something, like that could be the best $20 you ever spent, in this business. I buy John Brinder lunch and I wind up with an 18-unit apartment building 3 months later. That's well worth a $20 lunch. And you never know which one it's going to be. So that's one of the lessons. And the other lesson for people is to, there's a couple of them. One is do what you say you're going to do. If you say you're interested in 10-unit buildings and somebody shows up with one, you better be able to close, because you're going to look like a fool. If it's a good deal and you're like, well, can't get the money, you got the time, you're going to look like an idiot. So if you can't do it, say you can't do it. If you say you can do it, then you better be prepared to do it. And then the third thing that's really important is, doing what you say you're going to do, like as far as like financially and all, like never screw anybody. If you tell somebody you're going to pay them something, I don't care what happens, pay them. It's like, it just doesn't matter. Your reputation is so important that, I hear stuff all the time about people that did something real stupid and their reputation gets dinged. And then, something comes up and, man, I don't want to deal with them. It's like, so protect your reputation. So long story short, there it is. That's how we met.
Wow, that's accurate also. So I'm glad on that Meldon speaking also. It's a couple of points that Mark touched on that people need to know. And that's why I mess with Mark. That's why I deal with Mark, because first of all, he likes helping people. He's knowledgeable. He's always honest. So I never, and in this business, honesty is probably the hardest thing to find, like somebody to trust is find. Like Mark is definitely one of the people I trust in this game. And like his word is good. So I know if Mark tell me something is good. So like I can tell him, I can send Mark an address for a wholesale deal. He go look at it. And I don't even have to do a piece of paper with him or contract with him unless the title company wants it. And that's why he's one of the people I look up to. And he'll help you. Like if you call Mark and ask him whatever question you need to ask him about how to get in real estate or how to do whatever, he'll answer honestly. So that's what I love about Mark. And he took that 18 unit, fixed it up, rented it out. How much did you get in income a month on that building, Mark?
Man, I think towards when I sold it last year, it's probably around 18,000 a month coming in. It was 9 1-bedroom apartments, 6 2-bedroom apartments, and 3 3-bedrooms. And I don't think any market tenants in the whole building. I don't think anybody in the building had a job.
Right. It was like a program, right? That's why I say program runners are the best.
Wow. And there's a lot of different programs. Section 8 was one, but there was a lot of other programs in Baltimore City that are funded by HUD, where different nonprofits, get the money goes from HUD. In Baltimore, it goes to Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, or called MOS.
Yeah.
And then they dole it out in grants to different nonprofits, which cater to different affected or disaffected populations, depending on how you want to define it. People that have different kinds of disabilities, people that just get out of prison, people that have, recovering from drug issues, and populations that generally struggle to support themselves. And these nonprofits are out there to help them, to assist them and enable them. And it's not just paying the rent, but it's also, if the people need medical stuff or mental health issues, like helping them get some type of assistance and getting some guidance with, those types of things as well. So there's, these programs, and they're nonprofit. So, they don't get a lot of money. So they don't have the funding to do a lot of the things that they want to do. They just don't have the money or the resources. So a lot of people get frustrated with the programs, but when you understand that these people are there because they care, man. It's like they're not. You don't get rich with a nonprofit as a social worker or helping these clients find housing. Like these people aren't rich. These people are struggling just like everybody else, but they make it their mission to help other people that can't help themselves, and that's the population that I like to work with because in many ways I was once one of those people.
Exactly. So yeah, so you got the 18 unit fixed up, and you run into the programs. Like the programs are vital to our business because we do tenant placement, so we work with like 13 programs. But it's also helping people. When you place people from these programs, it's helping the community. So how much was it? I don't want to ask you how much you sold it, but how much was it listed for when you tried to sell it last year, Mark?
Yeah, I didn't list it. I wasn't even going to sell it for another 3, 4, 5 years because I was paying down, between that building and another 14 unit and another 13 unit that I owned. I think I was paying down a lot between all of my business, all of my buildings. I was paying down around 16, 17, $18,000 a month in principal. And so I thought, I'll stick with this another 3 or 4 years and get another, whatever $17,000 times 36 months is, whatever that is, get that additional equity, and then I'm going to hang it up.
Right.
And then I got a text message, and this is another important thing. I got a text message from a wholesaler that I know. His guy's name is Dave Pelta, and he asked me if I knew anyone that had any buildings for sale that were like 20 units and up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my biggest building was 18 units, but he got my attention because I know Dave, and I think he's a really decent guy, and he's a hardworking guy, and he's a humble guy, and so I thought, man, let me call him up and see what he's looking for, like who his client is, like what's going on. So I called him up, and he told me he's got these guys from New York that are cash buyers. They're looking for 20 units and up, and they had recently bought like a 34 unit from him, and that's it. They were just looking for stuff. So I said, listen, man, I got a few buildings I would consider selling. And so I just threw out the 3 that I had at $70,000 per unit for all 3 buildings. So altogether, it was 32, it's 45 units at $70,000 per unit. And I think the ones in the 18 unit were worth a little more than 75, but in the 14 unit, I think they were worth significantly less than 70. So it all kind of balanced out. Mm-hmm. And I ended up selling it. It was, off the top of my head, I don't know, $3 million, something like that. And I only paid Dave a $40,000 assignment fee. If I would have paid a realtor, I'd have paid $180,000. I'd have paid like $3 million. So it saved me $140,000 by using him. And also, they were cash buyers, so that we didn't have any financing contingencies, any inspection contingencies, like phase 1 environmentals or like all that other crap that gets involved, in the knuckle dragging with the lenders where they wait, obviously they wait till like the day before settlement, and then they demand a whole bunch of other documents, and then you've got to sign another extension and all that crap. So he presented me with an opportunity where I could save, $140,000 in commission. I could get out of these things really easy. And so my thoughts were, man, I could either hang on to another 3 years and maybe make a couple $100,000 more. I don't know. I mean, but it's not just free money. I mean, I'm managing the properties as well. So it wasn't free. I mean, it means I'm going to have to work to manage these 45 units for a few more years. And it was 45 units. There was also 12 garages that were mostly rented out as well. So, so I was looking at it like, man, you know what? I'm wanting to retire. I'm ready to get the hell out of Baltimore and go out and explore more of the planet a little more often than I was. And so I threw out those numbers, not really expecting them to say that they wanted the deal, but I thought, well, I'm not going to shortchange myself. I'm going to sell them for what I think is, pretty close to market, and maybe a little below market, but I'm making up for it by the less aggravation and less commission. And then he called me up the next day and said, man, they're interested.
Wow.
And I sent him all the information, and 2 months later, it was like May 5th of last year, we went to settlement and everything sold. And Dave got paid like, the next day, as soon as, I got home, when the money got wired to my account, I sent him a check.
Wow. So you, and everyone is listening to this, the one variable in that played a vital part in Mark's transactions and success was a wholesaler.
Yep.
So that we preach here that wholesaling, a lot of people get into real estate wholesaling as opposed to saving up $100,000 to buy the house and do all that. So if you start with wholesaling, it's a need for wholesalers, and we preach that here on this podcast, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean that. First of all, thanks for your time, Mark. The story is awesome, and I appreciate what you were talking about. We talked about honesty and integrity, even just saying, sort of the old, good old fashioned handshake and giving someone your word. You're just going to do
Mhm.
what you say you're going to do, and completing a deal in that fashion. Because I think sometimes in this litigious society, we get so caught up on contracts and signing this and that and having the paperwork. I was laughing today. I sent another deal, and the person was just, "Hey, where's the contract? Where's the contract?" And I'm saying the EMD is there, so be cool. We're gonna get the contract over to you, and so it was just interesting to hear you kind of say it from a different perspective, where hey, you believe, and when you deal with solid people, and people say, and that's something that Al was kind of just instilled in me too, talking about the idea of you keeping your name good in this business, and you spoke to that too as well. I want to ask, when you think about wholesaling in your experience, because I know you're at a total different space now, level now. What tips would you give about, or something you would share for folks who are just getting in to talk about wholesaling, on how it could potentially, be a benefit to them or jumpstart them getting into the business?
All right. The number one thing, and maybe the hardest thing to do, is answer the phone every time it rings as fast as you can. Because if you don't answer the phone and then you call them back like an hour later, there's a greater than 50% chance you will never talk to that person. And if you don't believe it, next time you're driving around, you see like a "We Buy Houses" sign hanging on a lightning, a light pole or something like that. Call
Yeah.
the number. Most of the time, they don't answer.
Right.
It's like, and if you do the cost, if you like really track all your numbers and say, man, I spent $8,000 on my marketing, and I got 80 phone calls, and I got one deal where I made $20,000. If you do the math, man, like each one of those phone calls, might have cost you $500, and then you miss the call. It's like,
Yeah.
and it's when you measure the number of calls you get based on how much money you spent, that ought to motivate you to answer the phone. And it's not just how much you spent to make the phone ring, but the potential deal on the other end of the line. And what happens is, and I speak from experience, because there are times where I haven't been able to answer the phone at the time because maybe I'm in a settlement, maybe I'm sleeping, I don't know.
Yeah.
And if I can't answer it, people leave a message. Sometimes they don't leave a message, but I always had a number that was assigned just for the wholesaling, so I knew it wasn't a personal call or anything like that.
Mhm.
And then I would keep track of it. Like, okay, I missed this call, and then I would keep track of every time I called him back. And when it finally got to the sixth or seventh one, where I couldn't get in touch with him, I would just put a big X through the page and file it away. And I didn't throw it away; I kept it, but I just put a big X on it, just to let myself know, like, yeah, I already, I screwed this one up. This is my fault. And so that's my most important thing that I would tell people is answer the damn phone.
Yeah.
Rule number one. I have to learn that rule.
Yeah. That's
I know.
That's
Yeah.
right saying it.
So, but since we're on this, and I know this is a thing, how do you do that? Because I can imagine at the level you are now, and I know Al is well versed in experience. One of the things I know, he gets 100 calls a day. So since I've been working with him, right, I've been trying to take some of that pressure off, right? Just say, look, he'll say, call Meldon, he's my guy, call Meldon.
Yep.
He's coaching me, he's giving me, deals, he's giving me, we look at houses together. Sometimes I look at it myself. He's sending me pictures, even if I didn't go with him to look at a property. And so we're kind of trying to sync everything. But 100 calls a day, man, that's tough, right?
I used to get them. That's exactly what I was getting. 2006, 2007, 2008, when I was wholesaling full time. I wholesaled a little over 200, and I was getting more than either making or receiving well over 100 phone calls every day. Wow. And I made myself available. It was this thing, my little headset, my little Bluetooth. Man, I can sit there with this. I can drive and take the call. I can sit at my desk and take notes. I can look up a property while I'm on the phone. And I was on the phone all the time. Wow. But I had to be, man. I had to be. It's just, I still wear this thing all the time. I'm in my camper right now. I wear this thing in my damn camper. Because if the phone rings and I see it across the room, and it's like my wife, like I want to answer the damn phone, you know.
Yeah,
right.
You don't wear it in the shower, do you, Mark?
I'm thinking about that. Nah, I probably should have. No, I probably have in the past.
But nah, so that's well taken. Answer the phone. I'm working on it. That's why I got Meldon next to me. So
Nah.
he takes a lot of slack
Well,
off.
here's one of the ways around that, and we experimented with this before. Was you can set up a VA or one of these calling centers. We used one in Florida. I can't remember the name of it. It was like Call Ruby or something like that. And if it called this number, we used Vonage for our stuff. This was before Call Rail and a lot of these other things that were around. And we would get a call, and if nobody answered in like the third ring, then it would automatically forward to the answering center, the call center, and they had a list of questions that we want to ask. And the most important questions are, what's the person's name? What's the best number to call them back at? Because sometimes they might be calling from a phone number, and you call it back, and it's a switchboard for their office, and you got to press the extension. Nobody knows what it is, so get the person's name, the best number to call them back at, and the property address that they're calling about. Start with that, and then make sure that in your list of questions, one of the questions that you ask, or your VA or whoever's taking your calls is, just curious, do you have any other properties you're thinking about selling? Mm-hmm. Because you're going to miss a lot of deals if you don't ask that, because maybe the one that they're calling you about isn't a good deal. But then you ask that question and you find out, your father-in-law just died and he's got a house that's been kind of run down, and they're getting ready to sell that and they weren't really sure what to do with it, and you would have never found out about that if you didn't ask the question. So always follow up with, do you have any other properties that you're considering selling at this time?
Wow. So now, in all seriousness, I wasn't ribbing my partner here, Al, but I think it's important, because I think what we've been trying to drill to people is being sort of self-motivated. I know Al talked about in our former episode about getting a list, getting in your car, getting a pencil, a notepad, and a tank of gas, and you could start your business.
That's true.
He was kind of just trying to give people some inspiration, kind of reiterate that in a sense. But I, also thinking about, once you like phone calls, it does take a lot of your own motivation. So listening to you say, hey, I keep phones on, I can look up properties in my car while I'm in the car, while I'm moving, if I'm going to the gym, I can answer the phone, whatever you're doing in your daily course of still having a life, you can still kind of be attentive to this business. So I think that is something that is empowering, because I think sometimes people want to pick it up almost like as a hobby, or like, this is if I work from 9 to 5, then I'm going to work on my real estate business from 5 to 9. But it doesn't necessarily work like that, right? That, you may have to incorporate this into your lifestyle a bit more than just this thing you pick up, for 5 hours or 3 hours a day.
Yeah, that's a conversation that I've been having a lot with some of my clients lately, is you get out of it what you put into it. And if you want more, you got to do more.
You touched on something, Mark, that I want to speak on. I want to go into. You didn't get to where you are. Like, you didn't start. You start off wholesaling, from what I hear, but there was a Mark before wholesaling, and there's a Mark after wholesaling. The apartment buildings and stuff is after the wholesaling before. So can you speak a little bit about your journey, how you got to the point where you started wholesaling, and then from wholesaling, how you transferred that into purchasing the apartment buildings? Because I want to hear more about that, because a lot of people I talk to, they feel as though I don't have the money, and I'm not making enough money to do this, and I'm down on my luck, and I got too many bills and all this. So they are already at a disadvantage just because of a lack of money. Can you speak a little bit about your journey till you got to the apartment buildings?
Sure. How far back do you want me to go?
Man, go back to the California days, whatever.
All right. So when I say this story, this is something that I was actually like really, ashamed of and embarrassed about for years and years, and didn't really tell anybody except like my closest circle.
But I was inspired. You inspired me. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, I didn't want to be judged for my earlier years, but in the 1980s, when I was younger, I was born in 65. When I was 17 years old in 1982, I got kicked out of high school. And in 1983, I was 17. I started shooting coke and heroin. And, I was like doing every other drug I could get my hands on up to that time. I started smoking weed and drinking and smoking cigarettes when I was like 12. And so about the time I was 17, I had like done everything I could get my hands on. And coke and heroin were the next steps in that cycle. And between the ages of 17 and 25, there was once you get involved in that life, things change, and you become a person that you couldn't have even imagined becoming prior to that. And I was always, as a kid, I was a decent kid. I was nice and polite and respectful to people, and you know, I was somebody that you would have probably liked. And then I got into that lifestyle. I was probably somebody that you wouldn't have liked.
Mm.
Where, by the time I was 25, I'd been, in and out of jail a few times, spent a year in prison, spent some time in jail in Florida, spent some time in jail in Pennsylvania, lived on the streets, sleeping in abandoned houses in Hollywood, California,
Damn.
living in the street for a short period of time up outside of Philly. And then ended up getting kicked out of a drug rehab and hitchhiked to Florida in the winter because I'd violated my probation. If I stayed in Baltimore, I'm going to prison for 4 more years. I'm like, well, I'm not really interested in that. But, I got to live on the streets. I'm gonna go somewhere warm. So I hitchhiked down to Florida, and and started a whole new kind of life. Ended up going to jail in Florida. It's a whole different story. But over the next couple of years, I wound up living in an apartment outside of Philly. Got a girlfriend, got a job, still doing coke and heroin, and ended up, I robbed a bank outside of Philly
Wow.
and
Go
robbed. It's a long story, but I was arrested for a strong arm robbery in Pennsylvania, and I got out on bail. And I know it's funny, isn't it? I mean, because you can't believe that. Like when you meet me, you can't even imagine that.
No, not at all. Excuse
Yeah.
me.
Wow.
So I got a strong arm robbery in Pennsylvania, and I got out on bail, and I was out on bail, and I'm living in this apartment with this girl. We're up on the top floor, and there's a knock on the door. This is like the end of this whole thing. There's a
Mhm.
knock on the door, and my girlfriend gets up and opens it, and it's the sheriff for Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, the bail bondsman, and they want to lock me up, and I'm out on bail, and I'm like, what's up, for what? And they're like, well, we're going to revoke your bail because we received word that you're going to flee the state. Now that was true, and of course I denied it, but I was very compliant and very polite, and very pleasant. And I said, all right, well, let me get dressed, because I'm like literally laying in bed. And so I start getting dressed, and I was a cocky
Mhm.
SOB. I remember I looked at my girlfriend and winked, and she kind of like looked at me like, all right, what you gonna do? And I'm just like, man, I'm getting dressed to run. Like I ain't, like if you look at what I'm doing, man, I'm tying my shit tight. I'm tucking them laces in. I'm getting ready. I'm taking off
Hello.
one way or another. And then, but I'm being real nice at the same time. I'm wearing like loose clothes and all, I'm ready to go. And I asked the sheriff, I said, look, man, is it all right if I, call my grandma? She's gonna be worried about me. And, I don't want her, I just want to tell her what happened. And, because I was being real nice and real compliant, he agreed. So he walks me in the kitchen, and there's a hallway. There's 2 doors in the hallway in the kitchen. One goes out to the fire escape, one goes to the hallway, and in the hallway there's a door that goes down 2 flights out to the street. So he's standing at the doorway in the hallway, and the bail bondsman was standing in the doorway that goes out to the fire escape. And I picked up the phone, and I acted like I was talking to my grandmother. There wasn't even nobody on the phone. I'm just talking, trying to figure out what I'm going to do. Like, okay, how am I going to work this thing? And there was another window in the kitchen. And if I went out that, there was a roof there to the second floor or the first floor apartment. I could have jumped down to the ground, but diving through that closed window, you might end up like getting some gashes and bleeding out, before you hit the ground. So a little hesitant to do that. So I'm just talking. And the sheriff, he says, all right, man, you got to hang up. And I just kind of delayed. I was like, all right, man, just give me a second. And then a minute later, I was like, all right, man, you got to go. I was like, all right, man, just give me a second. And then he came around behind me. That was his mistake because he left that door open. he came around behind me and he grabbed my hand and I spun around and picked his ass up and threw him over the kitchen table behind me.
Damn.
And then turned back around, went down that hall, opened the door, down the steps, out into the street, down into the woods along the Schuylkill River. And there was a railroad track that I took down to a bridge that crossed over to another town. I can't remember what it was called. It might have been Bluebell or something. I was in Norristown at the time. And yeah, and at the time, you know, I wanted to cross over the bridge, but I didn't want to get on the top because I figured, man, they're gonna be looking for me now, you know. And if you're on the top, like they can see you. So, and the river is too far. I couldn't swim across it; it was too far.
Right.
And I went up underneath the bridge, and there's these, you know, the girders, you know, the joists or whatever the hell they are that go across to hold the bridge up. Well, I climbed up on top of one of them, and I just got my back up against one of those joists that's like 6 foot tall, and I just, you know, stood on it. And I just, with my back against it, I just went right foot, right foot, and made my way across that river.
Man.
And then, you know, it's even crazier because on the other side of the river, there's another train track, and there was a train heading out of Philly. Don't know where it was going, but I thought, man, I'm gonna hop on that. You know, I'm hopping on that train, and I don't know where it's going. I don't care. It's out of here.
What?
But I couldn't keep up with the train. I was afraid I was going to fall running in that gravel. And
Right.
you know, you don't want to fall around a moving train, you know,
No.
because
Right.
I like my arms, I like my legs, you know. So stopped chasing it, and I worked my way over to this little town. I can't remember what it was called. It might have been like Bluebell or something like that. And I'm just like, man, I need a ride. You know, I got to jack a car. I got to do something. I got to figure something out. And so I'm walking around the neighborhood, and this car pulled up in front of a pharmacy, and they made a mistake. They left their motor running and ran in the pharmacy. Wasn't nobody in the car. And it's like, man, there's my ride. You know, it's like, you know, you ask and you shall receive. There's my ride. And
You go hard.
I hopped in it and took off. And it's funny because what happened was there was a kid hitchhiking when I was going down Route 1. I was going down Route 1. I didn't want to go on 95 or anything like this. I'm going down Route 1. And there was a kid hitchhiking. I picked him up. And well, I've hitchhiked all over the country, man. I mean, I've hitchhiked from California to Maryland, Vermont to Philly, you know, Maryland to Florida. I've hitchhiked all over the place. And this kid was hitchhiking, so I picked him up. And we were talking, and I said, man, I used to hitchhike a lot, but I don't do it anymore. I found an easier way. And he said, really, man? Well, what's the easier way? And I said, man, I steal cars. And he said, he looked at me like, really? I was like, yeah, man, I just stole this one.
Oh my goodness.
Just to see the look on his face. And, you know, he was a little surprised, but I took him, you know, to where he wanted to go. And then I headed back down to Baltimore. And then that's when the shit really hit the fan. You know, I left out this little part about a bank. The day after the sheriff left, the feds raided my apartment about a bank robbery. I think it was Collegeville. I think that's where that was at. And, or College Town, something like that. And my girlfriend didn't even know anything about it. And so then that cat was out the bag. And so, you know, I got this thing for assaulting the sheriff, you know, jumping bail. I was already violated my probation for, you know, Maryland's had 4 years there. And I just thought at this time, I'm just all in now. Like, I'm just going to run until I'm done. I'm just going to do what I'm doing till I either OD or get shot. And I started robbing stores and drug dealers. And that was it. And it's like I was doing one or two every day. And I did get arrested in September 8th, 89. There's a lot of lessons coming up right here. So I got arrested in September 8th, 1989 on Monument Street at the corner where Crescent Street is.
It is, yeah.
I was driving a stolen car, ran a red light. A girlfriend and I were staying in a motel out on Pulaski Highway, and we went and robbed a store, went and bought some drugs. On our way back to the motel, ran a light, got caught. Ended up, they sent me to Baltimore County Detention Center instead of Baltimore City because I had, 23 robberies in Baltimore County, but only a few in Baltimore City. So they sent me out there. And on October 2nd of 1989, I attempted to escape out of Baltimore County Detention Center. And, you know, it's one of these, they said, you know, they call it an escape-proof jail. Like, man, you got to show me. Like, I don't like, if I tell you I'm going to do something, like, I'm going to do it. You know, whether I'm going to show up and buy that 18-unit apartment building or I'm getting out of this jail. Like, if I tell you I'm going to do it, I do it.
So hold on, stop right there, Mark. Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay. You're getting high, coke dope, robbing banks, beat the police up, ran away from the police, got locked up. Now, do you consider this rock bottom right now, or you don't think you hit your rock bottom yet? As of this point,
At that point, I thought that my rock bottom was either getting shot or ODing.
okay, so
Because I tried AA, NA, churches, different girlfriends, moving to different states. Like I tried everything, man. In and out of jail. Like I just thought, well, this is who I am. I'm a broken human being, and I can't be fixed.
Oh.
And but that was about to change, because on October 2nd, I was on a high bail section of Baltimore County Detention Center, and I saw that I was in another guy's cell, and I saw that the weld on top of his bunk bed, it's a piece of steel. It's like 3.5 foot long. That's like, like a leg between one bed and another.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw it had a crack in the weld. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, if I can get this piece of steel off of here, I got a 3.5, 4 foot piece of steel. I can get through these windows, because the windows was like a real heavy duty mesh screen, and then there was a piece of cast iron like grate behind that, and there was just a piece of plastic, piece of plexiglass. So I thought, man, I get a piece of steel like that, I can get out this place. And I talked to the guy in the cell about it, and he didn't want nothing to do with it. And I was a different person back then, and I just said, look, man, I ain't fucking asking you. I'm telling you, I'm taking that shit. And you think you're going to do something about it? And, and that was it. I went and got a couple other guys. We came in, we laid on the bottom bed and pushed our feet up on the top bunk and just pushed as hard as we could, like doing a leg press.
Uh-huh.
And that weld popped. And then we bent that thing off, and then we went in my cell and shut the door and went to work on them windows. Got the screen off, got a big hole in the grate, and we was prying that plastic out when the COs rolled in on us and caught us.
Oh, goodness.
And I still wasn't done at that point. I'm like, you have to shoot me off the fence. Like, I ain't finished. It's like, I'm not going to live. I'm not going to spend 20, 30, 40 years locked up. Like, it just ain't going to happen.
Wow.
And what happened that did change things was, my attorney came to see me like a week or two later. And he sat, it's funny because we sat down in this little room, steel table, and just me and him. And now I'm going to use some language right here, some inappropriate language, but it was very appropriate at the time. He looked at me, he looked at me across the table, and he said, man, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, can't you even stay out of trouble in jail? You're already locked up. And then he said, don't you realize that if you do what you're supposed to do, you can be home by the time you're 30 years old. You'll be young enough to start a whole new life.
Mm.
And I hadn't really considered that. And, I felt like an idiot. I get this educated dude with a suit and tie doing well, sitting there telling me, asking me what the fuck's wrong with me. And I felt stupid. And I went back to my cell, and over the course of the next couple of days, what he said kind of gelled in my mind. It was like, man, I could start a whole new life. If I can be home by the time I'm 30, I'm 24 now. If I can be home by the time I'm 30 years old, young enough to start a whole new life, that is something that's worth exploring.
Wow.
And I was on lockup for 6 months. And during that, 6 months I was on lockup, I guess like 5 of those months were me like thinking like, all right, man, I got to figure out a plan so when I come home, I can live a decent life. Like, be somebody that my parents, my family would be proud of, instead of being, this loser. And it's just one of these damn things. I don't know if you call it the law of attraction or what, but I get out of lockup. It's like April 2nd, 1990. And on the tier, there was a book laying on one of the tables. They're called pods in Baltimore County. On the pod, there's a book on the table, paperback. And it was called You Can If You Think You Can. And I saw it laying there, and I was just like, wow, what's this shit? Because I'm reading like all the Stephen King and Louis L'Amour. If you've been locked up, you read Louis L'Amour. I mean, that's like the jails are flooded with these old Westerns. And I pick up the book, and I'm reading it, and the author, Norman Vincent Peale was his name. He was a minister, and the book was a little spiritual. It wasn't religious, but it was a little spiritual. But it was mostly about, if you believe in yourself, you have the power to change your life and be anybody that you want.
Mm.
And I was halfway through that book, and back then you could smoke in the jails. And I was, I smoked back then. I had a pack of cigarettes in my pocket and 2 cartons in my bunk, in my room, my cell. And I decided, man, I'm going to change my life. This book convinced me that I could change my life and become the person I wanted to be. And I quit smoking cigarettes. There was a guy named Frank Bertina, one of my jailhouse buddies. I said, Frank, man, take these cigarettes. I'm done, man.
Wow.
And he thought I was, like crazy or lying or bullshit or something like that. I'm like, man, I'm done. And I never smoked again. I mean, that was it. I quit. And the reason I did that was, it was kind of funny, but I was thinking to myself, like, man, listen, if I keep smoking, I'm probably going to, die 5 years sooner. If I got to spend 5 years in jail, if I quit smoking, then maybe I can add 5 years to my life to make up for the 5 years I'm losing.
Right.
So that was one of the ways I was looking at it. And then it was also just to prove to myself that I'm serious, man. I'm taking control of my life, and I'm gonna change who I am. And it worked, and so and here's the part of it. And here's something else that this isn't real estate stuff, but there's like a lot of really important life lessons. And I say this to like my students and clients and friends and family. It is never too late to call somebody and apologize.
Mm-hmm.
It is never too late to call somebody and thank them.
Mm.
And the cop that locked me up, I found him on Facebook like 12 years ago. And I sent him a message and said, man, did you ever work in the Eastern District of Baltimore City?
Oh, my goodness.
He didn't respond. And then, I waited a few weeks, and then I sent him another message, and I said, listen, man, you locked me up September 8th, 1989 for a bunch of robberies, had a federal warrant for my arrest for a bank. And I just want to let you know that I'm really sorry for all the things that I did, and that you saved my life, because if you hadn't arrested me, I wouldn't be here now. And I just want to let you know that I really, really appreciate it. And that, today I've got a wonderful wife and a great son and a great business, and I'm, a respected member of the community. And I just wouldn't happen without you. And we ended up, we're friends now. I got his number in my phone. I mean, we met, we talk on the phone, we're friends on Facebook. And
wow, that's amazing.
And then, there was the Baltimore County robber detective. I Googled him, couldn't find him on Facebook, but I Googled him and I found out he actually became a private attorney in Howard County. And I sent him an email and let him, know who I was and how things were going. And the same thing, I just want to let you know I'm sorry for all the shit that I did. It's, it wasn't me, and it wasn't how I was raised. And we ended up going to lunch at a place called Bare Bones in Ellicott City. We met there for lunch, and it's like if he needed me for something today, I'd be there in a minute.
Yeah.
And we're not like we don't talk or nothing, but it was just I wanted to apologize and I want to thank people. And just like 3 months ago, I called the attorney. He didn't even know I was. I haven't talked to him since 1990. And I told him the story, and I thanked him for saying what he said, because it changed the course of my life. Just that one conversation changed the direction of my life.
So, Mark, listen, your story has been amazing. Just, your journey, as Al talked about earlier. And so when I kind of got to that, Al called it rock bottom, that turning point, what was the kind of thing that put you to a place where you kind of got to where you are now? I mean, I know that's a lot, but
the lawyer in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was that book that turned my life around. I mean, it happened in an instant. It was like an on-off switch as opposed to like a dimmer switch. It was instant. It was on. And I'd warmed up to the idea, but I didn't know how I was going to do it. And then once I learned that believing in myself is all I needed, everything changed. Everything changed.
Man. And so people out here, like, I be complaining about my bills, and like, man, like, I know when I started, I was complaining about money. That basically was my only issue. But goodness gracious, you had a lot to overcome. So after the book and the lawyer and the talk from the lawyer, and you read the book and you got this switch clicked in your brain, where'd you go from there?
Well, I ended up with a 10-year, 9-month sentence in Maryland. And because I had sentences with different start dates. It was like 10 years in Baltimore City, 10 in Baltimore County, 10 in Harford County, and 10 in Carroll County. And the feds I got 57 months with the feds. They ran a concurrent. And with the feds, there's no parole. So, you take it to the door. And Pennsylvania was like a 2 to 4 year sentence. And they ran them all together in Maryland. So I was up in Hagerstown. I got an AA degree in business when I was there. Same school at Hagerstown Junior College. Same books, same tests, same instructors, but they come to the prison to teach the classes, but everything's the same. And just did everything I could. I avoided all the, I mean, there's a lot of everything that's on the street, it's in jail. And just avoided, stayed away from all that crap. Didn't get no trouble, didn't get no fights, nothing. It's just kept my, head down, stuck to myself and a few people that identified that were on the same path that I was. And, when I got out in June of 94, it's a whole different story that I'm not going to go into, but my girlfriend, my wife, she wasn't my wife then. She wasn't even a girlfriend then, but her and I got together, and based on some letters I wrote her when I was locked up. And I was working at a factory in Curtis Bay making $6 an hour. Before I got out of jail, I already had a job lined up, because when in my last 6 months, I was a minimum security and worked for what's called state use industries, where they pay you, back then it was like $3.15 a day. And I worked on a truck, and we would deliver like office furniture to different places in Maryland. And one of the places we would go to get pieces of office furniture was a steel plating company. They plated steel with chrome at this place in Curtis Bay. And we were there a couple times, and I talked to the owner and I said, look, man, I'm going to be out of here in a couple months. I'm going to be looking for a job. I'd love to work here. If you would consider hiring me, I mean, I got a history, but I would love to work here. And he said, sure, come see me when you get out. And I went and saw him when I got out, and he hired me. I started the next day, and it was $6 an hour. And then, this has really cracked some of my friends up, but I had already applied to get into UMBC. And, I was transparent. I was honest about everything. And, I had to jump through some hoops. I got out in June and September. I started at UMBC as a biochem major. I was majoring, it was called biochemistry and molecular biology. And, I started, heading down that path. And shortly afterwards, started working as a lab technician at a company in Arbutus. And, a couple years later, I saw the writing on the wall, like there's really no jobs in this. There's no money in this, but computers is where it's at. And I switched to computers. A friend of mine that was in the business said, don't waste your time with a degree. They're worthless. You get a 4-year degree in computer science. They don't even teach you how to hook up a printer. He said, get a degree, don't get a degree, get these certifications like Microsoft certifications and A+ computer repair certifications and stuff like that. So I switched gears, got out of college, started reading these books for these certifications, taking the tests, passing the tests. I got a bunch of certifications, and I got a job working at a help desk at Legg Mason in downtown Baltimore. And I was making $15 an hour. It was like the most money I ever made legally. And the 25th floor overlooking the beautiful downtown Inner Harbor. And I was a consultant or temp at the time. And after 6 months, they offered me a full-time job. My boss, Myrna, called me in her office, and she said, Mark, I'm pleased to announce that Legg Mason would like to offer you a permanent position. Wow. And I told her, I was like, well, Myrna, just something I got to tell you. I have some felonies on my record. And that was kind of minimizing it, right? Yeah. And she did she says, oh, and she was you could see kind of like she deflated a little bit. And she said, well, let me call HR real quick. And she called HR, and I could see like her eyes were starting to like tear up. And I knew it's like, oh man, this ain't going to be good. And she hung up the phone, and she looked at me and she said, I am so sorry. And within 5 seconds, 2 guys came in her office, and there's like the security to escort me to my desk to get my few things, and then to the elevator, down 25 flights out onto Pratt Street. Dang. Like off. So I'm sitting there enjoying my life, looking out the window, making it, for me, what was great money at the time. And then 10 minutes later, I'm like out on Pratt Street, like looking up at the building and saying, like, man, like what happened? But I wasn't even upset, because for me, based on my history of like dealing with one, hole after another that I dug myself into, like I always found a way out. And I just saw, okay, well, this thing fell through, but something else better is even going to, something else even better is going to come up. And it did. A couple weeks later, I started a job doing level 2 support at a place called Integrated Health Services in Cockeysville. And they started me at $20 an hour. Man. And 2 years later, I was ended up becoming a Microsoft certified trainer. And I was teaching computer classes. This was like around the year 2000. I guess I'd been out of prison like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And they were paying me, the contract I got, I worked 12 days a month and they paid me $6,000 a month.
Dang.
So every day that I worked above 12, I got $700 a day. And if I worked at night, I got $350 a night. And I was teaching computer classes at colleges all over Maryland. I mean, Towson University, UMBC, Howard Community College, Hartford Community College, Carroll Community College, Anne Arundel Community College. I think I went over to the Eastern Shore for something. And I was also teaching contracts for like the Federal Aviation Administration and Motor Vehicles Administration. They got a new software system. They taught me how to use it, and then they paid me to teach their employees how to use it.
Wow.
And I mean, I was like literally teaching internet security at the NSA down at Fort Meade. And 5 years ago, I was out of jail. I'm in their server room. I don't have a security clearance or nothing. You know, it's like,
Right.
and I'm in there, and I just, you know what, there's always a way. There's always a way.
So Mark, how did you get to real estate? So now this is really intriguing to me because
Totally opposite field.
yeah, man, you said biochem,
Yeah, I know, man.
computers. So how did you get to real estate?
Well, when I started making 130 to 150 a year, I saved my money, man. I mean, I know what it's like to be broke and living literally in the street, like not knowing where I'm going to go to eat that day. Like I've been there, and sometimes 1,000 miles from home, not knowing anybody. And so I always had that fear of going back there. So I'm like, man, I'm saving my money. You know, I'm saving. If I'm gonna go buy something that's $50, I'm gonna go to Circuit City. I'm going to Best Buy. I'm gonna spend a whole day trying to see if I can save $5. And I eventually figured out that was kind of stupid doing that because my time was worth more than the $5 I saved. But I saved my money, and eventually I was like, I got to put it somewhere. You know, what am I going to do? I tried the stock market. That's a joke. You know, as all the Bitcoin people are finding out now. You know, I don't mean the people that bought it at $8,000. I mean the people that bought it at $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. And I'd always had a kind of an interest in real estate. And I thought, man, I'm going to buy some rental properties. And my wife wasn't working at the time. And my goal was just I'm going to buy some rentals enough where if I lose my job, I say something stupid and get fired, something happens, then at least I got enough money coming in to pay the minimum expenses. You know, I mean, we might be eating ramen noodles, but at least we're eating. And I started buying rentals, man. From the moment that I made the decision I wanted to do that till I bought my first deal, it took about 6 months. And the first one's the hardest. Like, you know, first wholesale deals are hardest, first rehabs are hardest, first rental properties are hardest.
Yeah.
And part of that's because you're afraid. And when I bought my first one, I didn't know nobody, man. There wasn't no podcast. There wasn't, you know, like no biggerpockets.com. There was none of that stuff. I didn't even know there was no meetup.com. I didn't know about any RIAs, these meetings with other investors. I never heard of any of that stuff. And until like after I'd been in the business, like maybe 18 months, I probably had 10 units before I knew there was even such a thing as a real estate investor association meeting. And so I just kind of had to figure it out. And I put together a spreadsheet to run my numbers for me. And it was just a return on investment spreadsheet where I'd put in all the numbers, and at the bottom it told me how much money out of my pocket it cost to buy the deal, and then what my net income was per year, and then it would divide my net income by how much I put into it to give me my return on my investment. And I wanted to get a minimum of a 30% return. So if I'm coming out of pocket with 10 grand, I need to make 3,000 a year. Right. I'm not talking about appreciation, which is wishful thinking, and I'm not talking about mortgage pay down, which you're going to get anyway. But in the very beginning, it's minuscule. Your property has to appreciate 10% just to break even.
Right.
Because if it appreciates 10% and you sell it with a realtor, well, now there goes 6%, and then transfer and recordation, all that stuff. It's got to go up 10% just to break even. So I never really took appreciation into consideration. If I got it, great, but it's not required in order for my numbers to work. And so I just started looking for stuff, 30% return or greater. And here's what happened, and this is what happens to most of us, is you realize that, man, at the time I had about $130,000 that I had saved over the course of a few years. And I thought, my first property, I think I was out of pocket like $11,000 or something. And then the next property was like 6 or 7. And then the next one was, 7 or 8 or something. And I bought a bunch of units the first year, like maybe, I don't know, 6 buildings. And I started to see like, I'm going to run out of money. And then what am I going to do? And I'm going to skip a couple chapters of this story, but I figured out I was like the Columbus of the Burr method. Like I thought I discovered it. Never mind, there's already people there. But based on my own knowledge, like I didn't know, nobody told me it was there. So as far as I'm concerned, I did discover it. Other people discovered it too, but that doesn't take away from my discovery. And I discovered this Burr thing, which is. And here's how it happened. I was renovating houses and I was afraid. I was always a little leery of renovating houses. And I've done a handful, but it's not really what I'm good at. But I always had this fear like, man, what if I can't sell the house? Then what? It's always then what? Then what? That's how you find your way around obstacles. If you ever see an obstacle in your life, then you ask yourself, well, then what? Like, what are the ways around it? And then what happens? And then what happens? And so I was thinking, I'm buying it based on the formula that most of us are familiar with. ARV times 70% minus repair costs gives your maximum allowable offer. So I was using that for my rehabs, and I thought to myself, all right, so, well, I guess if I can't sell it, if nobody will buy my house, I guess I could just throw a tenant in there and then refinance it and pay my hard money lender back, and then I'll just keep the house.
Right.
And then I thought about it. I was like, keep the house. Wait a minute. Instead of buying houses with the intention of flipping them to other people, what if I do the same thing, but just keep the damn things and refinance it?
Pull some money
and
out.
then I get the house with nothing out of my pocket or very little.
Right.
And then I started doing that. The first one I did it with was a 15-unit building up in Forest Park. It was 8 apartments that were completely vacant and 7 commercial spaces. You know the building, Al, because you got a Turk that works there.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And it was the first Burr method I did. It was a 15-unit building that I still own. And so that changed everything. I mean, when I bought the 18-unit from you, I did the Burr method. When I bought the 14-unit on Gwynns Falls, Burr method. 13-unit on York Road, Burr method. 10-unit in Curtis Bay, Burr method. 7-unit on Walrad Street, Burr. Probably 30 houses with the Burr method. It was very little out of my pocket, very little or nothing out of my pocket for all those deals. And that was the key to growth, man. And then you ask yourself, well, I can't do that. Where am I going to get the money? These are the important things. And we talked about this at the very beginning, like your reputation. If you call 100 hard money lenders and they all know who you are and they think highly of you, man, you're going to have plenty of money. Yeah. If you call a lot of hard money lenders and they think you're a joke because you don't follow through and you're not taking care of your responsibilities, ain't nobody going to give you nothing. I don't care how good the deal is. Yeah. So your reputation is important. And this is part of your reputation. That's something people don't think about. Man, your credit score, that's part of your reputation. Wow. If your credit score is 540 and you call me and you want me to lend you $100,000, like it ain't happening. If you can't honor your obligations that you already have with other people, why should I think you're going to honor obligations with me? Right. If you're not paying your child support, you're not paying your medical bills, you're not paying BGE, you're not paying a landlord that kicked you out 4 years ago, I ain't lending you the money. Yeah. You already proved to me that you're not worth the risk. So, and a lot of people don't think like that. They're not thinking about that, but that's the way it works. My credit, it was very important to me. Even when I got out of jail and had no credit. I mean, I didn't have negative credit. I didn't have nothing. Like I'd never borrowed any money from anybody that showed up anywhere. And once it got above 700, it never went below that ever. And if you look at my credit report for the last 25 years, you'll never see a single missed payment, a single late payment, a single derogatory comment, nothing. I mean, Christ, I think the last time I checked, my credit score was like 836. I didn't even know they went that high.
Right. And that wasn't your Mark. That wasn't your mindset when you were going hard. It just was your mindset after you decided to go right. When
I decided to believe in myself and have confidence in myself. Listen, a lot of us grow up under different circumstances and with issues that I can't even imagine. Whether it's based on your race, your religion, your sexual orientation, like stuff I can't even relate to at all, other than knowing that we do have things in common, like getting rejected for different reasons. We just get rejected based on what we look like. or something we did 25 years ago. But that doesn't mean give up on yourself.
Yeah, Mark, this has been wow, man. I mean, we got to have you back.
Yeah, we got to do part
we
two.
got to have you back, man. I know you're busy. I know you're 97% retired, but please come back, man. You've been just giving us so much, but we got to pay the sponsors. We got to get ready to go. But is there one thing you want to say? And I'll give Al has one more question or one, but there's one other thing that you just want to, like, as one nugget, one sort of diamond gem.
If you're new to this business, if you're new to the real estate business or any business, network your ass off. Get some business cards made up that identify you as a real estate investor, wholesaler, whatever it is that you do, and then you find out what meetups are in your area, what real estate investor association meetings are in your area. You put those on your schedule and you start going to them. And then you're going to start to see the same people at different meetings. And then you start talking to them and introduce yourself and start to form these relationships. And then when you meet people that are like doing it, that seem receptive, ask them, hey, listen, man, I'd love to take you out to lunch. Would you be available? Like, just pick your favorite place in the city, man. Your favorite place. I mean, it's on me. And I want to make it so it's worth it to you too. Like, do you have any availability in the next couple of weeks? And you might buy somebody $20 lunch and you might get a $40,000 deal out of it. Or, it's just, you don't know. And that's the most important part of this business is your reputation and your network. Most important part, hands down.
Right. And we preach and speak on this, Mark, and then we'll let you
go.
Mark. How important it is, and that's what you're speaking on, how important is it to put people around you that's already done it or have the experience, as opposed to going in and trying to do it yourself, to put trustworthy people that's already been there, as opposed to trying to overcome things that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Is that pretty important?
Man, it's you can put it this way. You can learn everything I know and Al knows and Meldon knows on your own. And it might take you 25 years to figure it out. Or you can hang out with people that are doing it and shorten that learning curve. Man.
Wow.
I mean, I'm looking for shortcuts. If I can get a 4-year college degree in a year, I'm gonna get it. And if the way I do that is take the professor out to lunch. Let's go. It's like, you want to learn, go out with Meldon, go out with Al, and start surrounding yourself. You've heard Jim Rohn talk about the 5 people you surround yourself with. You're the average of those 5 people. Yes. And you gotta upsize those 5 people. If you're hanging out with 5 people that are always just talking about how to get over, how to look for shortcuts where they ain't got to do nothing and all that stuff, man, you got to get away from those people. You want to start talking. You don't want to talk to the people that are tearing themselves down. You want to start talking to people that are building themselves up. And you want to start associating with those people and identifying with those people. And eventually your mind shift starts to change and you begin to feel more like one of those successful people than you do one of the unsuccessful people.
Yeah,
exactly. That's why.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mel.
Yeah, Mark, I just want to give you an opportunity because we do have some folks that are following, listening. And if there's any information about your website or if they need properties, you want to kind of put that out there now if folks can contact you or connect with your network.
Because he do one-on-one.
Sure. Yeah, it's my email address is my name. It's mark@markowens.com. I got a website. It's in the process of being redone. I do some coaching, but I'm not taking any more clients for at least the next 6 months. I'm only taking like 5 or 6 at a time, and I've got enough now. I don't want any more because I'm going to be traveling a lot between now and the middle of October.
Yeah, because you're just traveling around the country right now, right? And you're in Winnebago.
Well, we're traveling around the country. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting ready. I got to head home. Then I'm going to go to the Cayman Islands for a week. Then I'm heading out west on June 1st. I'm going to Colorado, Utah, Nevada, California, Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota for about two and a half months.
See,
and then I come home. Then we go to Cayman Islands for 2 weeks. Then I come home. Then we go to England for like 2.5 weeks. And then I'm free after that. So I'm not taking any more clients after that.
That's my man. That's why Mark. I mean, that's not why Mark is one of my favorite people. But as you see his story, you can see why I gravitate to him. And I like to put people like Mark around me. I like you. Maybe I could talk to Fred Lewis and Jeff Schiller. You know, I know you guys got a lot more money than me, but I always learn.
I don't know about that, man. I don't know.
Listen, Mark, thank you, man. I look forward to meeting you in person, man. When you're back on the East Coast, or I'll catch you in Atlanta. And we thank you
We
for
want-
your time. And certainly want to have you come
on?
back. Absolutely. We definitely want you to come back on.
I'm
And,
ready,
we'll-
man. Just let me know when.
with you.
I will.
But listen,
Mark.
we also do mentoring.
Yeah.
So go to skymilesllc.com for any interest in our mentoring classes with me and Mr. Davis, the real estate guru, I call him. And please tune in to Ham Radio for our real estate podcast. We're also on all the social media platforms, YouTube, Google, Spotify podcast, and we're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all of that stuff. Please follow us. Look forward to you, and we're gonna have a great guest, Mark Owens. Thank you, man. This has been a great show.
You're welcome,
man, and we look forward to having you again. Thank you all for joining us, Mark. Enjoy the Winnebago. Enjoy Charleston. We'll see you soon. To the real estate guru, appreciate you, Al.
Appreciate you, big brother.
King Richard, Ham Radio family. Take care. We love you guys. See you guys next time.